Hi, I'm Natalie. I have a 5 week and 5 day old son, and I'm breastfeeding in Wolverhampton. So I think in my head, I kind of like, I was expecting for it to be painful. I went to the Wentzfield Children's Village breastfeeding and support group just to say, oh, can you help me collect colostrum? Because I had to have him by emergency C-section. I had the syringes of colostrum with me, but he was a greedy little baby. So as soon as he came out, I think he had all of them. And then my sister put him on for me as well. I was like, this is straight because I was out of it as well. So I did go to the group prior because he was born the 12th of August, and so October, sorry. But from August, I started to go to the group because I'm a teacher, so I had the 6 weeks holidays, and it was good for me to establish relationships with the team as well as other moms and speak to them and hear their stories, but it still doesn't prepare you for your own reality of breastfeeding. I got to 8 centimeters dilated at home. I was like, okay, we need to get to the hospital. Got to the hospital. The midwife examined me, said that was 8 centimeters. I was like, oh my God, shut your mouth. I can't believe like I did 8 centimeters at home on my own. 2 o'clock, I was still only 9 centimeters, and I thought I would have had him by then. So I had to go on an oxytocin drip to try and, because part of my cervix was thick and hadn't dilated fully. So I went on the drip for 2 hours. At 4 o'clock, the doctor came and examined me. He tried to sort of lift and move part of the cervix out of the way. It didn't work. So he said, oh, we're going to have to do an emergency C-section, especially because my son's heart rate was dropping and everything was fine, as in like my delivery wasn't traumatic or anything, but it was my as soon as I had him in my recovery because my I was on iron tablets from about June, but it should have been sooner. So my iron levels were low. I said I might have to have a blood transfusion, but luckily I didn't. I lost a lot of blood, but not enough to have a transfusion. And the doctor said, "Oh, they're low, but not an iron infusion would be too dramatic," were her words. But then I still ended up having to have one because my iron levels just kept on dropping. My care was excellent, sort of my midwife was wonderful, but it was just after I'd had him and you literally left on your own. So I was on the ward from Saturday evening till Tuesday afternoon, about 3, 4 o'clock. And it was literally on Monday when Casey came to my house, who's part of the breastfeeding team. Um, she said, "Oh, did the midwife come and check on you twice to see how you're breastfeeding?" I said, "No one knew how I was feeding him. They didn't know whether it's formula or breast milk because no one asked and no one came to see." Because I had fibroids and I had one that was, as the surgeon called it, a gigantic fibroid, but it was growing outside, so it wasn't growing in the, yeah. So I could feel it, and because I was breastfeeding or attempting to breastfeed, and then when your uterus is contracting, so that's it took ages for my uterus to go back down to normal because the fibroid was in the way stopping it, and because it was compressing, it was pressing on the fibroid, and that was what was causing the pain. So I had to go back when I went back into hospital. The doctor said that he wanted to admit me, and I said, "Well, what are my two options?" I said, "What'll happen if I stay at home, and what'll happen if I stay in hospital?" And he just said he'd give me stronger painkillers, coldidromol, and ibuprofen, and then said if I was in hospital, then I'd get oral morphine. Um, and I said, well, I'll just go home and see how I go tonight with the cold Idramol. And I said, if it is bad, then I'll come back tomorrow. And then I'll be physically and mentally prepared to stay in hospital. So I had all that to go on. Then I had a 2 week old. So it all happened in the first 2 weeks. I think he was 5 days old, and I went to a breastfeeding group just to say, oh, can you help? Um, because I wasn't confident with the latch. Like when he latched on, it didn't hurt, but it just didn't feel like I was feeding him enough. So But when we went to the group, he wouldn't wake up. Like he was sleeping. He's like, I'm not waking up for anything. So that's when I reached out to Casey, who came to my house. When you're in a group where you have someone come to your house and they're guiding you through, you feel confident. You're like, yeah, I've got it. But then when they're not there, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're exhausted and your baby's crying, it's it's incredibly lonely and so hard because he was £6.3, then he dropped down to £5.12, and then he was just putting weight on so slowly. And so in between, I was just like, I can't do this. I'm just going to give him formula. Obviously, my milk's not enough. I'm not enough. I'm a failure. But in Wolverhampton, they have a breast pump loan scheme. That's what I'm using at the minute. And then once his weight was up, I felt like there was a lot of pressure off, because it just felt like a lot of pressure from the midwives. A lot of pressure, but no support. There needs to be more open and honest conversations, or I think just knowing the actual realities. People sort of gloss over it and act as if it's this wonderful, magical thing, and it is. But then when you think about the actual harsh realities of motherhood, and you know it's going to be hard. And I think even if people tell you it's going to be hard, you don't realize how hard it is until you experience it yourself. And my mum will go to my sister's house. She'll have like days where she goes to my sister's, days where she comes to mine. She normally comes on a Wednesday, so I go to like breastfeeding group on a Wednesday, and then she'll come and collect us because obviously I can't drive because of my C-section. So she'll come and collect us from the group and come back here. She'll look after him. I'll come up here, and just go to sleep for a couple of hours. She'll feed him and change him and entertain him and spoil him, and then I just sleep. I am quite lucky in that sense. And my cousins will come round and be like, oh, what do you want doing? Do you need a world of washing? Do you want me to run the Hoover around? Or my friend changed my bed sheets for me. So